Hello everyone, and welcome to Cineverse. Today, we're diving into the chilling and suspenseful drama horror thriller, Hunter x Hunter, 2020. This intense film will keep you on edge with its gripping story, unexpected twists, and a shocking finale. So, without further ado, let's get started. At the beginning of this story, we see a man who was a hunter, along with his daughter, setting traps to catch animals. These traps were a kind of net used to trap prey, and he was also removing animals caught in old traps. They had their dog with them, and the man talked to his wife, Anne, through the radio. He asked her to go to town and bring back some essential items. There were 3 people in this family who lived in the forest, away from the city. They made a living by selling the skins of the animals they caught in their traps. They cooked the meat for food and sold the skins. This was their only source of income because, apart from hunting, they didn't know any other trade. Due to this, Anne's husband was also teaching their daughter how to hunt, but she was not yet skilled in this work. As the father and daughter were checking the traps, they noticed that an animal was missing from one of them. Seeing this, their daughter said, "It must be him. He has come back." She was talking about a wolf, which tells us that this wasn't the first time this had happened. Meanwhile, Anne took the animal skins to a store to sell them. At the store, Anne looked very upset because the price of the skins had fallen. She neither got a fair price for them, nor enough food in return. Seeing her problem, the shop owner told her that the skins of ordinary animals were only worth so much. If she wanted more money, she would need to bring the skin of a tiger. But even then, Anne was worried, thinking, "Where will I get the skin of a wolf?" She was also looking at some posters with great interest. One of them advertised a rental house and a good job. From her expression, it seemed that she wanted to buy a house and get a stable job, but for some reason, she couldn't. She didn't like hunting either. She wished they could live in town instead of the forest so she could send her daughter to a good school. But since they didn't have enough money, at home, Anne's husband was teaching their daughter how to skin an animal, while Anne was cooking food for everyone. Everyone was in a bad mood, even at dinner, because they had very little to eat due to their financial struggles. When their daughter mentioned that the wolf had taken their prey, Anne became furious with her husband because he hadn't told her about it. She told him to do something about the situation, or else they would starve. Then, sending their daughter inside, Anne continued arguing with her husband. He said that wolves like to hunt girls, so it must have come here because of some girl or some animal. But Anne disagreed, saying, "I think it came here because of us, our family. It knows it can find trapped prey here without working hard." She added, "I want to go to the police station and report this," but her husband refused, saying, "No, don't worry, I will catch it myself tomorrow morning." However, this wasn't their only concern. Anne showed him the same ad poster and asked, "How long can we live like this? If I take a good job, we can have a better life." But her husband refused, saying, "We can't do anything other than hunting. We don't know anything else." Later, they stepped outside, and Anne tried to make her husband understand. She said, "Look, you're not thinking about our daughter's future. You chose this life, and I chose it because of you. But our daughter didn't get a choice. Let her do what she wants. Right now, she should be worried about her studies, not about trapping animals. There are no people living in this jungle. This is not a wise way to live." But despite her words, her husband didn't listen. He said, "This is our life, and our future generations will live like this too, no matter what happens." On their daughter's insistence, he took her along, which Anne didn't like at all. She spoke to her husband over the radio, and he said, "Like I realized it was a sheep. If the time for hunting comes, I will send her back." Soon, he saw fresh wolf tracks, realizing the wolf was nearby. He explained everything to his daughter and sent her back, telling her that he would return by night. He also reassured her not to be afraid or panic. However, as she walked back, terrifying sounds came from the jungle, making her even more frightened. At the same time, Anne was also feeling uneasy. While returning home after fetching water from the river, she sensed that someone was following her. She became scared. The same thing was happening with her daughter. Anne somehow managed to reach home, but her daughter was unable to return. She sits there in fear. The wolf also sees Anne's husband, so he immediately shoots at him. However, it does not seem that he is dead. Her daughter also hears the sound of the bullet. Gathering her courage, she moves forward. After shooting, when Anne's husband comes to check, he realizes that Bedia is no longer there, meaning he has run away. However, what he sees next horrifies him. There lies a severed hand of a girl, which Bedia was eating. Now, he crosses the road and moves deeper into the other side of the forest. As he advances, he is left stunned and terrified. He discovers the severed bodies of girls, brutally dismembered and arranged in a circular pattern. It is clear that this cannot be the work of Bedia alone. This horrifying scene makes him realize that apart from Bedia, a murderer is also lurking in the forest. Someone who is killing girls with a weapon. This revelation terrifies him even more because his family is now in grave danger. He believes he can handle the wolf, but dealing with a dangerous murderer will not be easy. Upon returning home, he sits quietly, lost in thought. His sleep and hunger vanish as fear grips him. He does not tell his family anything, not wanting to scare them. However, deep inside, he knows that he himself is on the brink of death. He is ready to do anything to protect them. The next morning, when Anne wakes up, she finds her husband missing. He has gone back to the same place where he saw the bodies of the girls. He had told Anne, "Even if I have to stay the whole night to find the wolf, I will stay, so don't worry about me." However, in reality, he is not looking for the wolf. He is searching for the murderer. Later, when Anne and her daughter are at the riverbank, her daughter notices that their dog is missing. She sets out to look for him, but suddenly, the same wolf appears before them and starts moving toward them. Seeing the wolf, Anne immediately starts screaming. This is the first thing that comes to her mind, and luckily, her idea works. Bedia runs away, allowing Anne and her daughter to rush back to the house without wasting any time. However, their dog is still outside. Determined to find him, Anne takes a gun and sets out in search of him. Eventually, she finds the dog, but he is already dead, killed by the wolf. The sight of her lifeless pet fills her with grief and pain. She returns home and tells her daughter that the dog has not been found yet. She lies, saying, "When your father comes back, we will look for him." She hides the truth about the dog's death to prevent her daughter from feeling scared or realizing that their lives are in danger. At this point, the movie's title, Hunter x Hunter, begins to make sense. This hunter family is trapped between two hunters, both of whom threaten their lives. One is the wolf, and the other is the unknown killer. Morning arrives, but Anne's husband neither returns home nor calls. Concerned, both mother and daughter go to check their traps. Once again, they find that one of their prey is missing. While searching, Anne stumbles upon a ring. Seeing it sends a shiver down her spine. It likely belongs to one of the girls who had been devoured by the wolf. Terrified, she heads straight to the police station to report the wolf, hoping it will be captured. Meanwhile, the police chief and his officers notice an abandoned car on the side of the road. Although the chief examines it briefly, he does not pay much attention and continues driving back to the station. When the officers arrive, Anne is already there, waiting anxiously. She tells them everything, but their response is disheartening. They explain that her area does not fall under their jurisdiction, and capturing the wolf is not an option. It's not the animal's fault, they argue. They do not understand human laws. They are just following their instincts. You live in the jungle, you hunt, so the fault is yours, not the wolf's. If any action is taken, it will be against you, not the animal. With no help from the authorities, Anne has no choice but to fend for herself. She buys some food, returns home, buries her dog, and hunts a fawn for survival. Although she knows it is wrong, they have no other option. With her husband missing, the wolf lurking nearby, and their food supplies dwindling, Anne realizes she must take charge. That evening, Anne and her daughter skin the deer together, cook it, and start eating. Suddenly, a strange sound comes through the radio. Anne responds, but the voice on the other end is unclear. Later that night, while both mother and daughter are sleeping, they are startled awake by the distant screams of someone in the jungle. Anne rushes outside to check. To her shock, she finds not her husband, but an unknown man, severely injured and pleading for help. She quickly sends her daughter back inside, and using whatever she can, manages to carry the injured man home. She fears that danger could be lurking nearby. Upon checking his belongings, she finds a radio. His leg is in terrible condition. The night passes, and by morning, Anne's daughter wakes up in fear and immediately calls her mother. On her daughter's request, Anne gives the man some water and stitches the wound on his leg. Watching this, Anne's daughter feels uneasy. She reminds her mother, "Dad always said never to trust a stranger." Anne, however, insists, "Look at him. He's badly hurt. If your dad were here, he would help him too." Meanwhile, the police chief, while driving past the same abandoned car from the previous day, realizes it has not moved in 2 days. Growing suspicious, he steps out, inspects the area, and notes down the car's license plate. Back at Anne's house, the injured man finally wakes up and introduces himself as Lou. Anne questions him, "Not many people come to this forest. What were you doing here?" Lou replies, "That's my specialty. I came to take pictures of the forest, but my car broke down on the way. So, I decided to continue on foot. That's when something attacked me. I didn't see what it was, but it could have been the wolf. Also, that abandoned car, it's mine. His injuries are severe, and he desperately needs medical attention. However, because of the wolf, they cannot risk going outside. If the wolf is still nearby, escaping will be impossible." Anne, determined to help him, tries to get Lou to his car with her daughter's assistance. But on the way, Lou screams in pain, forcing them to turn back. Left with no other option, Anne and her daughter set a trap for the wolf. They scatter pieces of poisoned meat and light a fire nearby, hoping to lure the beast and protect themselves. Meanwhile, the police chief remains deep in thought. He realizes that people, especially young girls, have been disappearing for some time, and the pattern continues. Now, although only an hour was left before his shift ended, the officer still decided to check the abandoned car. That decision turned out to be his biggest mistake. As he followed the tracks leading away from the vehicle, his foot suddenly got caught in a trap. When he struggled to free himself, his hand got stuck as well. He was now completely trapped, unable to move. This trap had most likely been set by Anne's husband to catch the real murderer, but unfortunately, the officer was the one who fell into it. Meanwhile, Anne stood motionless, gripping her gun tightly, still waiting for her husband's return. But as the entire night passed, he neither returned nor made any contact. At the Badia police station, another officer received a distressing voice message from Boss's wife. In it, she mentioned that her husband had not returned home the previous night. The officer immediately tried to reach Boss through the radio, but there was no response. Growing concerned, she left the station and headed towards the location. Back at the cabin, Anne could no longer sit and wait. She took a map and set off to find her husband. While searching, she came across a rabbit caught in a trap. As she reluctantly carried on, her radio suddenly picked up some movement, causing her to quicken her pace. And then she froze in horror. Lying lifeless on the ground was her husband's body. Tears welled up in her eyes as she broke down, crying uncontrollably. In that moment, everything became painfully clear. Her husband was not killed by the wolf. It was Lou. Lou was the murderer. He was the same man responsible for killing all those missing girls. Anne's husband must have discovered the truth, but before he could do anything, Lou killed him and fled. However, her husband must have put up a fight because Lou was badly injured, and Anne, unknowingly, had brought that very murderer into her own home and saved his life. Panic surged through her veins as she raced back home, her only thought being to protect her child. Meanwhile, the officer who had come searching for Boss finally reached the scene. Realizing he was in serious danger, she quickly called for backup. Back at the house, Anne cautiously stepped inside. She found her daughter, safe and sound, sleeping peacefully in her bed. But something was wrong. The murderer, Lou, was nowhere to be seen. Then, her blood ran cold. He was hiding, right behind the door. Immediately, Lou lunges at Anne, attacking her with full force. A violent struggle ensues, and in the chaos, a bullet is fired from Anne's gun. The gunshot startles her daughter awake. She rushes to the scene. Anne is overpowered by Lou and knocked unconscious. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, the police arrive at the location where Boss was trapped. However, before they can free him, he succumbs to his injuries and dies. The officers, now determined to track down the culprit, follow the signs and continue deeper into the jungle. Back at the house, Anne slowly regains consciousness. Lou stands over her and demands the keys to the truck. "Where is my daughter?" But Lou ignores her question. Instead, he smirks and says coldly, "None of this would have happened if your husband had just minded his own business and stayed out of it." Anne's heart pounds as he continues, "To keep my secret hidden. First I killed your husband, and now I'll kill you too." Without remorse, he burns all of Anne's belongings, reducing her past to ashes. Then, he moves toward her, his intentions clear. But before he can harm her, Anne seizes the moment. She traps his mouth, struggles free, and fights back with all her might. She grabs a nearby object and strikes him hard, knocking him unconscious. She stumbles into the next room, and what she sees there shatters her completely. Her daughter's lifeless body, determined to exact revenge, Anne drags Lou's unconscious body and hangs him by a rope. She puts on her headphones, drowning out the world with music, as she begins her brutal act. With the precision of a hunter, she starts skinning him, piece by piece, just as one would an animal, because that's exactly what he was. Blood pours from his body as she methodically removes his skin, even stripping the flesh from his face. The gruesome sight is beyond horrifying. By the time she's finished, he is barely recognizable, just a grotesque, bloody mess. Outside, the police finally arrive at the cabin, but by then, Anne has already completed her revenge. Stepping out of the house, she carries something with her, Lou's skin. The officers stare in utter shock as she throws the bloodied remains toward them. No words are spoken, no explanation is needed. The police rush inside and find Lou, still barely alive, but in a state so horrifying that even the most hardened officers recoil. His fate is sealed. He won't last long. Meanwhile, Anne sits quietly, her headphones still on. She listens to her music, lost in her thoughts, until suddenly, a memory of her family flashes in her mind. She stops the music, and with that, the film ends. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the video in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you enjoyed it, make sure to share it with your friends. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.